Next, let's make the clothing. We'll start with the bride's outfit. It includes the collar, the dress, the cloak, and the veil. Let's begin with crocheting the collar. Work it on the remaining half stitch of the 63rd round of the body. Start crocheting from the middle front by joining the yarn. Now, I'll demonstrate with a sample swatch. Take out the corresponding yarn. First, join the yarn at the corresponding position. Then, work the stitches according to the chart from the next stitch onward. Weave in the ends. Make the last slip stitch in the same position, where you joined the yarn. Leave a little yarn tail and cut off. Then hide the yarn tail inside the body. After completing it, work a round of slip stitches along the edge where you inserted the hook for the collar. That completes the collar. Next, let's crochet the dress. We will start from the foundation chain. Work back and forth from the foundation chain. Before working, leave a yarn tail of about 20 centimeters. After completing it, leave a yarn tail of about 50 centimeters and cut off the yarn. Pay attention while crocheting. For some rounds, you need to pick up the front or back loops only. Make sure not to crochet incorrectly. Please watch the demonstration. Start with a chain stitch. Remember to leave a long yarn tail at the beginning. I will skip that step here. After making the foundation chain, start from the third stitch from the end. Begin crocheting half double crochets, HDC. The first row is completed. Next, work on the second row. Make 2 chain stitches as the beginning chain. Turn your work. These 2 chain stitches count as 1 half double crochet. This should correspond to the last half double crochet of the previous row. Then, follow the chart to crochet the corresponding number of half double crochets. Finish with 2 single crochets. Leave the remaining stitches unworked. Turn your work. Then crochet 20 slip stitches. For the last slip stitch, insert your hook into the top of the beginning chain. After completing, make 2 chain stitches as the beginning chain. Turn your work. Let's take a look. Here are 2 rows of braids. The braid closer to you consists of stitches. The one at the back is the braid formed by the slip stitches. Work into the back loop of the picked up stitch. Don't forget to include this last single crochet. If it's difficult to crochet, you can use a sewing needle to loosen the back loop first. Then crochet 12 half double crochets. Pick up one strand at the beginning chain and crochet. After completing, the second row is finished. Now let's move on to the third row. Make 2 chain stitches as the beginning chain. Turn your work. Make these 2 beginning chain stitches to correspond with the half double crochet from the previous row. Then pick up and work into the back loop. Continue down to complete this row. This completes the third row. Follow the chart to finish crocheting the remaining part of the skirt. Now I'll use this sample to demonstrate the sewing method for the skirt. Thread the previously left yarn tail through a sewing needle. Then pick up the stitches and sew the last round of stitches with a whip stitch. After sewing, hide the yarn tail inside the skirt. Next, slip the skirt over the body. Make sure the wider side is facing down. Use the reserved yarn tail to sew it to the 33rd round of the body. The sewing method doesn't need to be complicated, just make sure it's secure. Pay attention while sewing, ensuring the seam on the skirt is positioned at the back. That concludes the instructions for the skirt. Now let's move on to the clothing. The clothing consists of the top, the left front piece, the right front piece, the back piece, the edging, and the sleeves. Start by crocheting the top. We will start with the foundation chain. Work back and forth along the starting chain. Now, let's show. First, everyone follow the chart to crochet the first 5 rows. Here I have already completed. Now, move on to crochet the 6th row. Chain 1 as a beginning chain. Turn your work. Start with 5 single crochets. Then make 7 chains. Skip 9 stitches. Refer to the chart to crochet the corresponding number of single crochets. After completing, chain 7 more. Then skip 9 stitches. Then make 5 more single crochets. After completing, the 6th row is done. Now, move on to crochet the 7th row. Chain 1 as a beginning chain. Turn your work. Start with 5 single crochets. Then pick only front loops. To make single crochets. Next, follow the chart to complete this row. After completing, the 7th row is done. Continue following the chart to crochet the entire top. Don't cut the yarn after finishing. This completes the top. After finishing the top, move on to crochet the left front piece. Start crocheting the first row using the yarn tail from the top. Chain 1 as a beginning chain. Turn your work. Then, follow the chart to crochet the corresponding number of single crochets. After completing, the first row is done. Next, follow the chart all the way to finish row 19. Cut the yarn after finishing. Now, move on to crochet row 20. Join the yarn at the 6th stitch, from the wrong side of row 13, counting from the left. Then, crochet 6 single crochets. After completing, row 20 is done. That concludes the left front piece. Next, we will crochet the right front piece, at the last row of the garment, from the wrong side, counting from the left. Join the yarn at the corresponding stitch. Then, crochet the corresponding number of single crochets. After completing, the first row is done. Now everyone, follow the chart to finish crocheting the left front piece. Next, we will crochet the edging. Crocheting the edging means working around the entire edge of the garment. Let me demonstrate the crocheting method. Continue crocheting from the yarn tail of the back piece. Make one beginning chain. Turn your work. First, crochet along the last row of the back piece. Then, crochet the corresponding number of single crochets along the side edge of the back piece. Next, you'll reach the gap between the back piece and the front piece. Here, work a single crochet that combines 3 stitches into one. First, make 3 incomplete single crochets. Insert the hook into the side edge of the back piece, and the skipped stitch between the back piece and the front piece, as well as the side edge of the front piece. Then yarn over and draw through all the loops on your hook. This completes one single crochet that combines 3 stitches into one. Next, crochet 17 single crochets along the side edge of the front piece. At the corner position, work a single crochet increase. Then continue crocheting along the last row and side edge of the front piece. Crochet 16 single crochets evenly. When you encounter a yarn tail, wrap it as you go. At the corner, work a single crochet that combines 3 stitches into one. Then continue along the side edge and neckline. Crochet the corresponding number of single crochets. Keep crocheting until you reach the symmetrical position on the other side. At the corner, work another single crochet that combines 3 stitches into one. Continue with the stitch pattern to match the other side. After completing, join with a slip stitch to the first single crochet. Pull tight. This completes the first round. Leave a yarn tail and fasten off. Next, Start working on the second row. Crochet the corresponding number of single crochets. Then work 1 half double crochet, since the next stitch requires a color change. Start with an incomplete half double crochet here, yarn over with the hook, insert the hook, draw the yarn through. Now there are 3 loops on the hook. This is an incomplete half double crochet. Pull through with the other color of yarn. This completes the color change. Continue crocheting with the new color. Wrap the old yarn as you crochet. It's time to change colors again. Follow the same method to change colors. You can cut the old yarn after wrapping it for a few stitches. After completing the crochet, it should end with a corner, using 3 single crochets in 1 stitch and finishing with 1 stitch in the middle. Then check if the color change positions are symmetrical. If not symmetrical, adjust according to the actual situation. You can add or reduce single crochets on both sides. Finally, leave a yarn tail, fasten off, and weave in the ends. The second row of the edging is now complete. Next, let's work on the third row. In this row, we will change colors at the neckline. Pick up the insertion point and crochet slip stitches. Take the corresponding yarn, join the yarn from a little bit on the side. Then continue crocheting along the insertion points. As you crochet, you can place 1 yarn tail above the stitch and 1 below the stitch. Secure the yarn tails. After completing the crochet, leave a yarn tail, fasten off, and weave in the ends. This completes the third row of the edging. That concludes the edging section. Next, let's learn how to crochet the sleeves. There are 2 identical sleeves. Both are crocheted by joining the yarn under the arm of the sweater. Let me demonstrate the technique. For the left sleeve, join the yarn at the 4th stitch under the arm. For the right sleeve, join the yarn at the 5th stitch under the arm. Here, I will demonstrate the method for the left sleeve. Apart from the joining position, both sleeves are crocheted using the same method. After joining the yarn, begin crocheting the first round. Follow the stitch pattern in the table. Once completed, join with a slip stitch to the first single crochet. Pull tight. This completes the first round. Next, let's crochet the second round. Make 1 beginning chain. Turn your work. Continue following the stitch pattern in the table. Once completed, join with a slip stitch. This completes the second round. Now follow the table to finish the remaining rounds of the sleeve. Pay attention that after making the beginning chain for each round, you need to turn your work. That concludes the sleeve. Next, let's talk about the decoration for the sleeve. We will sew a ribbon around the cuff. Cut a piece of ribbon about 20 centimeters long. You can also measure it against the circumference of the cuff. Make sure to leave an extra 1-2 centimeters in width when measuring. After completing this, cut about 50 centimeters of the same color yarn as the sleeve. Take out 2 strands from it. Place the right sides of the ribbon together. Sew the beginning and ending of the ribbon together. The sewing width should be the same as the extra width you left when measuring. After sewing, turn it so that the right side faces out. Slip it over the cuff. Sew it along the circumference. After finishing the sewing, transition to the other side within the fabric piece. Continue sewing in circles. For the decoration on the other sleeve, follow the same method. That concludes the decoration for the sleeves. Next, let's learn how to make a triangular fabric piece. We will start with a foundation chain. Work back and forth along the foundation chain. Before starting, leave a yarn tail of about 15 centimeters. After completing the work, crochet a round of single crochets along the outer edge. Follow the chart to complete it. After finishing, leave a yarn tail of about 30 centimeters. Once the fabric piece is completed, sew it onto the back of the sweater. Align the starting point with row 18. Use the reserved yarn tail for sewing. Secure the pointed shape here. Align the ending position with row 34. Use the reserved yarn tail to pick up and sew through the single crochet stitches here. Continue working downward to complete it. That concludes the triangular fabric piece. Then, put the sweater on the toy. Next, make the button loops. The button loops are made up of chains and pearls. Start a little below the color change at the neckline, on both sides. Sew 3 pearls on each side. Space them approximately 0.5 centimeters apart. Refer to the finished product and sew the pearls first. After sewing the pearls, we will make the chain. Now, let's show. First, crochet 18 chain stitches using gold thread. Work the chains tightly. After crocheting, leave about 15 centimeters of yarn tail. I have already crocheted this part in advance. Then, thread the reserved yarn tail into a darning needle. Wrap the chain around the pearl. Then sew a few stitches to secure it. Weave in the yarn tail to hide it. Next, thread the other yarn tail into a darning needle. Wrap it around the corresponding pearl on the collar for symmetry. Then secure it. Finally, weave in this yarn tail as well to hide it. This buckle motif is now completed. Next, follow the same method to make the remaining 2 buckle motifs. That concludes the buckle motifs. Now let's move on to making the shawl. The shawl consists of a fabric piece and decorations. First, crochet the fabric piece, then create the decorations. Start the fabric piece with a foundation chain. Work back and forth along the foundation chain. Follow the chart to crochet it accordingly. This is the completed swatch. Then fold it upwards along the center of the piece. After folding, both sides should be about the same length. Use the same color yarn to secure this edge. While securing, sew a large pearl here. Then tie a knot with these 2 yarn tails. Finally, hide all the yarn tails inside the fabric piece. I won't hide them here for demonstration purposes. Once done, take out the curved band. Attach it from the broken side of the shawl. Also glue this folded edge. After gluing, trim off any excess parts. From here on, please attach it as needed. Finally, sew larger seed beads along both sides of the fabric piece using sewing thread. Use larger seed beads for the shawl. Align the seed beads roughly with the indented area of the curved band. Let me demonstrate the method now. Start sewing from either end of the fabric piece. First, hide the yarn tail inside the fabric piece, then sew through the first indented position. Sew the seed beads along the edge, spacing them slightly apart. After sewing, carry the yarn across to the next indented position, inside the fabric piece and sew through. Continue sewing using this method. Once one side is completed, carry the yarn across to the other side and sew. Proceed to sew all the seed beads following this method. Similarly, join the yarn on the other side, secure the yarn tail on the wrong side, and then sew along both edges. Continue sewing it up from here. Finally, attach the shawl, zip to the doll. Make sure the folded edge faces forward. Then secure the shoulder area with glue. Place both ends inside the triangular fabric piece. And also secure them with glue. That concludes the shawl. Up to this point, we have covered all the bride's attire. Next, we will make the groom's outfit. It consists of the body, the hem, the edging, the sleeves and the collar. Start by crocheting the body. Then crochet the hem. After completing it, crochet the edging along the hem. Finally, crochet the sleeves and the collar. For the body, we will start from the foundation chain. Follow the magic ring, form a loop. The method for creating the armholes in the 7th round is identical to that of the bride's outfit. Next, follow the chart to crochet the body. After completing the body, crochet the hem. It is divided into front and back pieces. Divided into front and back pieces. The crocheting method is the same, only the first stitch joining position is different. Follow the chart and join the yarn at the corresponding stitch count. Crochet the front and back pieces separately. That concludes the instructions for the hem. After completing the body, crochet the edging. Join the yarn at the first stitch of the last row of the back piece. Crochet the stitch pattern according to the chart. Pay attention and do not adjust the position of the first stitch. Finally, use gold thread to crochet slip stitches on the 3rd and 18th rows of both the front and back pieces. Follow the chart to complete it. Lastly, crochet the collar. The crocheting method is the same as for the bride's version. For the groom's version, pick up the remaining 1-2 loops of chain stitches. After completing the collar, insert the hook at the entry position and use gold thread to crochet a round of slip stitches. Follow the chart to complete it. Once the garment is finished, put it on the body. Slip it on from top to bottom. After putting on the garment, let's move on to making the decorations. First, sew a motif slightly above the center of the body. Now, let's show. Here, I will demonstrate with any small sample. Pull out 2 strands of the same color thread from the garment. First, secure the yarn tail inside the garment. Then sew through the outermost small hole. After sewing, weave in the ends inside the garment. Trim excess tail. This completes the motif. Next, sew a motif on each sleeve. Use the same sewing technique as for the front of the garment. After sewing, bend it slightly along the arm. Then, at the hem of the garment, sew a long metal accessory between 2 rows of slip stitches. The sewing method doesn't need to be complicated, just ensure it's secure. Finally, attach a lace trim above and below the motif. On both sides, apply a small section of the trim inside the garment. Complete it as you see fit. That concludes the decoration for the groom's outfit. Now let's crochet the waist belt. We will start with the foundation chain. Work back and forth along the foundation chain. Follow the chart to complete it. After completing it, attach it around rows 23-25 of the garment. Position the beginning and ending, where they meet at the back of the garment. Then sew them together. Finally, sew the top and bottom edges of the waist belt to the body of the garment. After sewing, attach a button at the center front and back positions. Lastly, glue 2 flat back beads on either side of the button. Follow the chart to complete it. That concludes the waist belt. This completes the entire groom's outfit. Up to this point, we have finished the entire doll. If you have any questions during the crocheting process, if there are still any unclear parts, don't hesitate to join our Facebook group to get support. Susan's family. Support your handwork experience. Enjoy the joy of life. Thank you all for watching. See you in the next episode.